All right, everybody. Episode 2 of Tap In. Thank you for joining us. This one is Figma It Out. Episode 1 was for Builder 2.0 and really foundational. Today we're going to get into Figma and really taking your content from static to interactive in using one of the best design tools on the market in Figma. So we're going to cover from an agenda standpoint just a brief intro on what is Figma, why does it matter, especially when it comes to interactive content design. We are blessed to have a guest here with us today, Kyle Blackman, our lead product designer here at Tiled. And so he's going to go over how our team uses Tiled and shapes innovation with using Figma. So Kyle, thank you so much for joining us, and I'll let you introduce yourself in a second. Just lastly, we'll dig into the how and the practical workflow. So getting started with one of Tiled's Figma templates, creating an interactive digital user experience, and then using Tiled's plugin to create, but also update your content as you move forward. So Kyle, again, thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
We're here in, Kyle and I are here in sunny San Diego, but it's actually raining a shit ton. So
Yep.
if I'm
I might
lying.
have better weather here in Dallas. Sounds like sun is shining. I think it's about 80, but I think it's going to be 40 tomorrow.
Everybody gets theirs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. This time of year.
So, welcome, Kyle. You're our first guest. How does it feel?
I feel honored. I feel very, very special, and I'm really glad you guys thought of me.
As you should. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey here at Tiled, how you came to be, or how long you've been here?
Yeah, so I've been the senior product designer here for the past almost 4.5 years, and yeah, I've had an opportunity to touch pretty much every aspect of the product and influence in one way or another the look or the UX of the product. And yeah, it's been a real fun journey learning about the product and how to make it better, and learning how our users use the product, and yeah, growing along with the company. So
Yeah, Kyle and I are on the same team, we're on the product team. I love doing design review with this guy. He's so thoughtful about how he approaches design and takes feedback well, which is hard as a designer. I mean, in my previous life, nobody wants to know, like, you
No.
need to make the button bigger, you need to make the spacing more, make the logo pop, but this guy handles it well.
wasn't always that way, but that's 20 years of experience that really, guided me into, hey, you should listen to what other people have to say.
Absolutely, it's definitely a learned and a learned behavior, a learned skill. Aren't all skills learned?
Yeah.
Someone's
I'll
got-
shut up now. Let's get into it. So, what is Figma? I like to describe Figma just for the non-designers. It's basically Google Docs for designers, right? Everyone works in the same file at the same time. It can be as structured or unstructured as you want it to be. You can see everyone's cursors moving around, which is fun at times and kind of jarring at others when you have some comment sections coming in. But it's a real level of real-time collaboration and a non-linear design tool, which we'll get into a little bit more. But I'll let Sean get us started.
Yeah, let's dig in. So Figma what? Figma who? Figma came onto the scene in 2012, but really it was like 2016, I think, in which they got started. So almost 10 years ago. But in starting at Tiled, and I feel like this is good, like backstory on kind of progression of design tools. Like I'm not a self-proclaimed designer. I know enough to be dangerous. But I started designing micro apps in Photoshop when I first got here. And
Yeah,
Matt Simpson, shout out Matt Simpson, at the time was like, "What are you doing?" I'm concerned. I'm concerned for you. And I mentioned that because, that was most comfortable for me and where I knew enough in Photoshop to like hide layers and like do things how I liked to do them. But at that point, he said, you should try out Sketch. And so Sketch was kind of the first dabble for me into like a UI UX, like a wireframing tool. And we had developed a plugin with Sketch, and then it was Adobe XD. And then, Figma started creeping on more into hearing about them, having customers ask about them. Obviously, in the UI UX front, still really heavily focused on product design at the time, and that's still obviously their bread and butter, but they do a ton more now. But I think the fact that it was browser-based, alternative to the Adobe products and kind of the red tape with all the CC applications, but just something new and something different. And I mean, in the past few years, Figma has risen so much that, I mean, Adobe was even trying to acquire them and talking about sunsetting XD, and obviously that didn't pan out. But I think that as a backstory around like where Figma came from, and then now, I mean, just the different tools that they're offering, the AI that they're building in, and how that impacts designers. I'm excited for y'all to hear Kyle's expertise and experience on that front. But I think where you look at some of these tools, and again, Sketch, XD, but now Figma, as we're zeroing in there, it's really this non-linear design thinking. Jess, I mean, deck of cards, that's like the ultimate deck of cards. Like the layout is not page by page like in InDesign or, going layer by layer, but it's more of like a storyboard in a sense. And
I'll hit on that deck of cards one more time because I think there was some confusion in the last episode because I kind of assumed everyone had already heard that. But my mistake for assuming. When I describe static presentations, and what I mean by a deck of cards is when you do a static presentation, you have to deal out your information one by one. And if you want to go back, you have to retrieve them back one by one. And so there's a kind of shift of a pseudo 2D to 3D relationship when you're going from static to interactive. Because you can take that same deck and that same information, and now the interactive experience can now be shuffled, rearranged, and you can see it all at once. And so your user gets to be in control of their own experience, and you get to see what's resonating with them. But really, I think that kind of metaphor, simile, or whatever it is saying is that by changing the context, you're changing the content. And what I mean by that is the same piece of information is going to land differently depending on when someone encounters it, what they click on when they get there, what they're looking for. And so that linear deck, everyone gets the same sequence, but in that interactive experience, the content adapts to the user's journey. They get to choose. And I think that shift in context of how they arrive and what they're curious about changes how they perceive and engage with your content. So an important shift, and I think one that Figma resonates with. And to kind of double back before we move on to our kind of conversation with Kyle, I think it's important to say that no one starts at Figma. And I think that's a good kind of segue to say, I didn't start in Figma. I actually started in architecture tools and started building presentations in Illustrator. And then moved on to the Adobe suite, like more broad InDesign, Photoshop, and then jumped into Figma. I think PowerPoint comes in between there because you have to use it more than likely. But, Kyle, what was the first design tool you used? If you say Figma, I might die.
No, absolutely not, dude. I've been in the game way too long. First design tool I used was called Paint Shop Pro, and this was back in 2002 or something like that.
Yeah, we can go all the way back to our kid versions of just using Paint and
I was gonna make a Microsoft.
Actually, that would be the accurate one.
Back when they had that paperclip, Mr. Clippy, as your AI assistant. Loved it.
Yeah,
bring it back.
The game all those years ago.
Have they not brought him back? Like, is he not their go-to AI? Like,
I don't know. I think
so long since I touched a Windows machine.
Because that's a miss if he's not.
No, 100%.
So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, Kyle. Kind of what was your transition from design tools? I guess we'd be interested to know how you landed here.
To go through the whole timeline of it, like I said, early on, messing around in Paint Shop Pro, stuff like that, and then it transitioned into Photoshop, and that's when I'm like, oh, now I'm using big boy tools and stuff like that. I'm like, this is the end all be all, and as Photoshop.
Back when Adobe didn't have a subscription at that.
Yes, that's when everyone just pirated their their version of Photoshop, worked with that forever, and then grew along with Adobe until some new faces came on the scene and started disrupting it a little bit. And by that I mean like Sketch, where it kind of everyone was kind of using Photoshop in like an all-purpose kind of sense. Like it's specifically basically meant for, editing photos, but everyone's like, oh, I can design apps with it, I can do this and that, and it's kind of a catch-all thing. When Sketch came on the scene, it was a tool that was specifically made to do what I was doing, which is like web design and app design, and that changes how you think about the tool that you're using. Like it's specifically targeted to the stuff that we're designing. And we were all diehard Sketch people until Figma started getting really good. And I remember I went to a design conference in San Francisco, and everybody at this conference would not stop talking about Figma. And I remember getting a little bit annoyed because I had used Figma when it first came out, and it wasn't that great. It didn't have pages. There was a lot of missing things, and I'm like, so I'm at this conference and people are talking about this app being great, and I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, they're crazy. After the conference, we went back to the office, and I downloaded Figma, and I realized, oh, they changed the game. This is so much better than Sketch, and literally the next week, we canceled our Sketch subscription, and the whole company moved over to Figma.
I love that story. That is so on brand for you, Kyle. Like, to take on the initiative to kind of see something new, dive in, and just go full force at it. That, I think, is the best way to describe what it's been like working with you. So, glad to know that's, like, foundational to your core and your design roles.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Kyle, what is your experience like using Figma at Tiled? And are you utilizing any other, like, innovations or specific portions that are kind of maybe underserved on the Figma space as you iterate with the builder and all of that? Do you use Figma Make?
I mean, it's a part of my design process these days, yeah. But
Yeah.
It's not all that I use, but it's become a new super helpful tool in ideating quickly and testing ideas, and it enables us to iterate, ideate, and test a lot faster than we could in the past. And, we can create like a functional prototype of a feature within 20 or 30 minutes, and it doesn't require the allocation of like any kind of engineering bandwidth or anything like that, which is, that's a game changer for us.
Yeah, no kidding. Can you, for the people who don't know what Figma Make is, or how it differs from just a standard Figma subscription, can you give us a quick version of what it unlocks? I mean, you kind of gave some on the product design side, but how does it work in terms of your workflow day to day?
Right. So, for the uninitiated, Figma Make is like an agentic, basically design and for, I guess, a development tool as well. I guess the kids are using vibe coding as, a term.
It's interesting because our audience builds content in Tiled, but they may not realize how much our own product is designed in Figma first, I think. This kind of shows this meta layer of we practice what we preach. Tell me, if you're constantly looking at design trends, kind of like we mentioned earlier when you first discovered Figma and dove right in, when you're designing, whether it's in Tiled or anywhere else, where do you find it most helpful to ideate and come up with like new solutions?
There's a couple different ways that I tend to go about that. The old school way of just kind of like doing a little bit of competitive analysis, or even just looking on other design sites and just kind of see how other people are solving problems. That's always going to be a tried and true way to just kind of like look around and get a feel for what the market is doing in terms of whatever feature you're trying to design. When it comes to diving in a little bit deeper, we have been using Figma Make a lot to help us land on a solution a lot faster than we have before in the past, and been kind of leaning on it almost as like an extra like design colleague that I can like brainstorm with in a very quick way, where it's literally just saying like, hey, here's this problem I'm trying to solve, like what do you think, or like how would you solve this problem, and it'll come at me with a solution, and maybe it'll hit the mark, or maybe it's not quite there, but it gives me an idea, and that's where that's why I say collaborating with another like designer or something like that, where you don't know what the final solution is going to be, and you just throw ideas out there and you go, that clicks with me, so that's been a really big helpful part of using Figma Make in that whole like ideation process, getting started.
Yeah, it's super easy as a designer to get sucked into a silo when you're trying to solve a specific problem or work on a specific feature. And so I think that's a great point in terms of thinking about Figma in the same way of a kind of different mindset shift is not just a production or a design tool of make the thing look good, but also people to see it as a thinking tool, like figure out what the thing should be, what the user experience should be. And it sounds like that's what you're using Figma Make for as a kind of second set of eyes.
Yeah, and obviously the output that it creates enables us to get prototypes and what feels like a working app in front of our users for like testing super early, or even just like doing some internal like kind of dog fooding sessions where we're just passing it around to some people in the company and just saying, hey, click through this, does this make sense? It's helped us, I mean, in the short time that we've been using it, helped us get sign off on ideas and features way faster. For example, the onboarding flow that I'm working on currently, that all started with a prompt session with Figma Make and started coming up with a rough flow in wireframe form, basically.
Yeah.
And passed it around to the CEO and passed it around to head of product and some other people, and it clicked. You could see that sort of like aha moment, like, this is the direction, this makes sense, this is the missing part of our onboarding thing. And it's wild to get that response that early in the design process and kind of feel confident that you're going the right direction, which usually doesn't happen until like much later in the process,
Absolutely, when you're way too far down the road and you have to basically scrap.
Yeah, or like just start pivoting wildly, trying to like, we didn't stick this landing here, we got to go over here, kind of thing. So
I know Sean is dying to say content that clicks. Yeah.
I wasn't. No, I was going to say it's kind of like a tale of two Kyles here, where there's like the agentic AI, the prompts, like the efficiency and the like move fast and break things type of thing. But then there's also, going back to what you were saying about like design research, and I feel like that taps in to Figma's roots and like their community and designers posting their projects, and then other people able to create copies or edit and like build off of them. So it's from your perspective, it's interesting to see kind of both paths.
Oh, totally. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think before we set you loose, what the kind of burning question is, outside of Figma Make, what do you think is kind of the under the radar or like underutilized aspects of Figma that people should absolutely know and be using in their day-to-day?
Right. So if I had to pick, I got two, and they're
Right.
smaller ones, but they're super useful, and I feel like, maybe not a lot of people know about them, or maybe not a lot of people use them, but I've been using them a lot lately. And number one is the scale tool. I mean, like, we all know how to resize layers and make them larger and smaller and whatnot. But what if you need to increase the scale of something by like 3x? Obviously, like, there's multiple ways to do that.
Yeah.
But with the scale tool, it's like super easy and straightforward to use it. You just select a layer, and then if you press the K button on your keyboard, the properties panel changes to include a scale tool, basically, where you can increase the scale factor by like 1x, 2x, 3x, 1.5, like all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and it helps. It helps a lot in certain situations. And the other one that I tend to use a lot that got introduced into the product somewhat recently is the select matching layers feature, which this comes in handy a lot if down the road you realize that you probably should have made something a component and you didn't, and it's on 15 different artboards and you have to edit that same thing over and over again. If you select one of those instances and press the select all layers button, it'll select everywhere on that page that thing exists, and you can kind of make some bulk edits and updates to it.
I love it, first off, but I'm like, almost feel like this is a don't tell me, show me type of thing. Like, could you walk us through like briefly?
All right, so to just kind of touch really quick on the select matching layers kind of thing, we're just going to look at got a design file here for the viewer that we were working on. If you select the top bar here, this particular UI element appears on, a lot of different screens here. And if you wanted to select that on multiple frames, you can go over here and you see this tool is the Select Matching Layers tool. Clicking on that will select every frame where that exists. So, for example, if I needed to move that another 10 pixels or whatever, or adjust the gap in between there by 20 or whatever, it'll do that on every single one of those things where it is currently selected. So, super helpful.
Yeah, and is that different from a component? These are just frames or elements?
I mean, it's if you select a component, it's going to select all those components.
Right.
But but yeah, this is really just kind of like looking at the layer name or the object name itself, and then selecting it everywhere that it finds it,
Okay.
within that page or within this section that the frames are selected in.
Like a la select same fill.
Kind
But
of, yeah. Or
more advanced.
Or find matching text or something like that. That kind of.
So important here that your layers or your naming conventions are solid in order to utilize this.
Yeah. So yeah, obviously it's working on the assumption that you're just kind of copying a frame and moving it to the next thing and not changing the name of your layers. And as long as that's the case, it should select them pretty seamlessly.
And shout out to you for your file organization too.
I mean-
I'm snooping on your layers and I'm not seeing group 57, group 59.
Hey, sometimes that happens though.
That's the difference between common folks and professional, I think. My files don't look like this in Figma.
And then the other one was the scale tool, right?
Yeah. So all right, for example, if, not that you would ever need to do this, but if I needed to scale up, make this whole thing larger, this whole modal here larger, if I were to just drag it, it works fine. But say you needed everything to actually be bigger, because all that's doing is it's kind of like doing a responsive behavior kind of thing. Sure. If I needed to actually be bigger in size with this object selected, if I press K on my keyboard, you'll see the properties panel changes to show this scale feature here. And right now it's at 1x, but if I put it at 3x, it blows it up.
Hey.
So I can't think of a specific instance that actually comes in handy, but when you
Maybe when the client asks, make it bigger. 2 times or 3?
no, but basically there are certain instances where I've needed to make certain things in a design actually everything within it larger, and a lot of times when you need to do that, you need to go in and on each layer make it so that the constraints are telling it to scale instead of be anchored to a certain point
right.
or one or another.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of editing that needs to take place. This allows you to circumvent that and basically just increase the scale factor of that particular element, and it all gets larger, and you don't need to mess with any constraints or anything like that. So.
And this is I feel like it's a custom Figma gem because you press K, right? You press K for Kyle?
Yes,
Cool.
absolutely.
Press K for Kyle
Yeah, it's
to scale.
the Command
I love
Kyle
that.
shortcut. Although it's not Command Kyle. But yeah, those are some two features that I've been getting a lot of use out of lately that I feel like not a lot of people talk about.
I think it's really nice to be able to scale in your working file. I think a lot of tools are utilizing a similar approach, but it has to do with the export function, which you can do in Figma as well. But I think it's so helpful to be able to do that and still be able to ideate within. So,
Yeah.
Kyle with the tips and tricks. Well, we really appreciate having you. Again, first guest. It's going to be hard to top. Pressure's on for the rest.
I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to help. If you guys ever want to have me back on, I'll come back on.
I'll be back.
All right.
Cool. Well, yeah, thank you so much, Kyle.
For sure.
Appreciate the perspective, the expertise, and just giving people more knowledge, more info on Figma. Just coming from your perspective, super valuable.
Right on.
Yeah.
Thank you, man.
Awesome. Well, we're gonna move into section 2 or phase 2, if you will. We'll tap in regards to how Tiled and Figma are working together, both from our templates And starting from a template in the builder, we'll get into that, kind of lay the land orientation of everything, and then we'll get into the plugin and how you use both in conjunction with each other to send over your frames and all of that. So,
I don't know if you mentioned the adjustment to the gear here, because it was your fault that it was echoing. But
yeah, wait, did my headset change? That's weird.
I know, right? Let's hit on 4 topics real quick. Why Figma changed the game for enterprise teams. Hit on the 4 big topics that I can think of that work well when you're kind of merging Figma as your design tool with Tiled. 1, collaboration is built in. We talked about that. Multiple designers work simultaneously, so there's no more who has the latest version. Everyone, right? Components and design systems. Kyle hit on that a little bit with, even if you don't have components, being able to make edits to same layer name things, assets really, to make adjustments there. But the benefit of a design system or components is that you're able to build a button once and use it 100 times, change that button style globally, and then resync that for automatic kind of updates. Then the third thing we'll hit on is kind of performance at scale. What do I mean by that? Global edits propagate instantly, version history and built in, your user gets control of their own experience and you get to see what's resonating. All of that kind of is encompassed in performance. And then the last, and the one that resonates closely with Tiled, is that it's browser based, so there's no more barrier to entry. There's no software to install, works on any device. It's almost as portable as Tiled is, and it's always the latest version. Quick synopsis, and Sean's going to get into the actual Figma how. How do we actually put this in practice in conjunction with Tiled? Let me also add that Figma is free to start. Tiled's plugin is free.
Yep.
Our templates are free. And so this is for you to test at any point.
Yeah, I think let's start there. So if you're new to Figma, then go check them out. I mean, their website highlights it all, what they're good at, where you're going to get value, and how you're going to change the game, like Jess said, as far as your design team and design systems go. Now, where Tiled comes into the equation, you do all your design and you get your efficiencies there in Figma. Our plugin will link you to this in the recap or the summary, but ultimately you're going to install this, and then when we get into the Tiled side of things, our templates are free. So when you go to create a new micro app in Tiled, you've got options, right? You can start from some of the other documents, which that's E3. I'm talking about PowerPoint. But as we were talking about Figma, if you want to pick a template of ours, we're defaulting to the Figma ones. We talked about XD and Sketch, but obviously Figma is the one that is on the up and up and that we're leaning in most closely with. But any of these templates, you've got the ability to preview and see, okay, how does this look and feel? Any of these, treat them like WordPress templates, right? They're just kind of layouts that you can reverse engineer. But ultimately, you can come in here and see how it's set up, main navigation, and see if it's something that you like. Most of our templates also have different formats. We haven't touched on that too much as far as like adaptive sizing and where Tiled plays in, where you're taking, the usual PDF that you'd scroll into on your phone, you're delivering something that feels more like a mobile website. And that's obviously a huge strength of Figma as well too. So you can pick one of these templates. So as you create that project, 2 things happen. One is we queue this template up on the Tiled side. All of the hotspots are already set up for you, all of the scrolls, all of this is fully assembled, video background to autoplay, like it is fully ready for you to go. The other thing that happens is that we link you to the design file. And so that's what you're seeing here on the Figma page. So
you kind of showed 2 steps, right? 1, it opens in the builder. 2, it opens in Figma. What's the distinction between the Tiled builder template and the Figma file structure?
think where Figma leaves off is, think of it like you're designing all of your frames and all your assets, all your copy and branding is happening on the Figma side. So as you're brought into the template, you have all of the introductory walkthrough, download your fonts, all of that. You also have the kind of storyboard here, and we talked a lot about this previously with other design tools, where instead of having to go page by page, this is more of like storyboarding what the experience is going to look like. And we do have screenshots of kind of the end page configuration at the top, and then below those, it's all of the assets or frames that contribute or are factored in. So, the main page background, and then the scroll is broken out separately as its own asset.
You talked a little bit about adaptive formats. Where, if I want both a desktop and mobile, would I find those frames?
So the main template is the desktop, and then for mobile, you can toggle over in the pages timeline over on the left-hand side. And then we've got the storyboard here for the mobile version, the mobile layout as well.
Cool. So from a reviewing kind of the design file, you get in there, everything's kind of built. It's already also in tiled. If I'm new to this and I've downloaded a template for the first time, I see both. I'm trying to make changes in tiled builder, but I'm not seeing the capability to do so. What might I do next? Let's say I want to change that company overview text. What's the best practice for that?
Yeah, so the way that this was brought over from Figma, you do have the ability to change this in here. And that's a choice that you, as the designer or the creator, if you're using one of these Figma files, have the ability to push forward with. Now, a totally valid question. Okay, I see it in here. I can change it. Is that what I'm supposed to do, or is that not? And that's where we do see, Figma. Our customers are using Figma as the source of truth from the design, right? Because tiled isn't meant to be the, we're not trying to compete with Figma. We're not trying to be a full-fledged design studio. And so we're leaning on the strengths of Figma. And that's also built into a lot of these templates too, as we get into the UI kit. These are global components where if you have your main logo here, you can just swap that out with your own logo, and then it's going to flow through across all the frames. Same with color settings and headings and typography. So all of this is available for you to adjust and really make a lot of changes in a small amount of time, more on the global level. And then ultimately, you're going to use our plugin to sync those over.
So I definitely don't want to put you on the spot here, but since you did Kyle, let's see it in action just a bit. On the UI kit, let's say I wanted to change wholesale the branding, not necessarily the logo for today's sake, but the colors.
Yeah.
Let's say we wanted to brand that in tiled colors. What's the best first step?
So what you would do is you would select the color component, and then you'll see that on the right-hand side there is the fill, and we've got our main accent 1, and so all we need to do is go to edit style, and then from here, what's our blue hex code? Do you know off the top of your head?
Whoa, don't put me back on the spot.
Wow, a little bait. Let's say it's this royal blue. It's like Dodger blue, maybe Toronto Blue Jay blue, I don't know, but basically you already see that a lot of the buttons have updated to the blue, the main navigation bar updates to blue. So as we go back here, that's how you start making quick changes. Apply your branding. You probably, if you're using Figma, already have your design systems in there. If you're new to Figma, that's where you can make a lot of quick changes.
It's not dissimilar from updating the theme of a PowerPoint, for instance.
Yep.
The same way you can change your fonts, your heading styles, your colors. It applies that way in a very similar fashion, right? Because we've already applied where that color goes in the template. So changing that first square to blue, change certain elements and components in the template, similar to updating a theme. And so just want to call out that to make those changes, do not try to do them one-to-one in the frames. Go to your UI kit first and then trickle out from there in terms of updating the template. So we've got our branding updated. We've made some edits to the template. What is the next step with the plugin? How do I make sure that what's coming over and syncing over? First, what does the plugin look like in Figma itself? And how do I make sure that what's coming over is coming over as I intend?
Yeah, and I think as we're talking about logistics, hey, I made that change in Figma, I'm not seeing it in tiled, right? So how do you push that change over? I'll head back to the Figma file. In order for you to get to the plugin, once you install it, and again, we'll link you to it. You can either go in the upper left, and then there's the plugins panel, and then you can select tiled, or in the bottom nav, you can also access it from this actions panel, and then plugins and widgets. Either way, you're then going to be brought into this panel here. Now, it'll prompt you to log in with your tile credentials, and then it's going to have you basically just sync to the project that you have in mind. Now, if you're in an account, you have multiple micro apps, you'll be able to do that. If you're starting from a template, it's going to automatically have it assigned. And look, it's even changed the blue in the thumbnail. You can barely see it, but it's already there for you.
Nice.
So this is what the plugin panel is going to look like. And then once you've made changes, you can select all of your frames, or if it's just one that you want to sync over, think of this as eliminating your import into tiled as assets. You're just syncing this over, this frame, so that it becomes an asset in tiled. If it matches your 1920 by 1080, because this was formatted for desktop, you'll see that it's going to come over as a page. You could also determine if it's going to come over as an overlay. But let's say we want to sync this home page over, and then we're going to break down, okay, coming to this library, this micro app, this adaptive size. Again, if we wanted to toggle over and change the mobile and sync those, you've got the ability to do those respectively. But we'll also give you a breakdown of, hey, what is coming in as a page and what is coming in as a tile. This is, I think, is another important distinction, is maybe you wanted everything in this homepage image to come over baked into a rasterized PNG, right?
Yeah.
So the text is baked in there. It's not editable. You've got the ability to do that. And basically, when you selected a given element, it would look like this. It would say, okay, now you've got the ability to, if you didn't want to have it in that first route of just syncing over as a rasterized PNG, maybe we want this to come over, and you can convert it and mark it for assignment, if you will, to convert it in tile to an image or convert it to a text box. And so as you do that, then that's where in that plugin panel you're seeing what is coming over as its own individual elements. And so as we do that, we go ahead and sync our changes. So after you hit the sync button, if you toggle over to your browser tab that you already have open, just hit it with a refresh. And now, again, just a quick change in color, but we're syncing it over. So as you're branding this the first time, the plugin's just going to bring changes over, but it's also super helpful when things are in maintenance mode and you're just making updates to say, hey, I already have this existing in tiled. I just need to go fix a typo or make a change. But again, there's kind of the distinction, hey, do we want everything baked into the image, or do we want this text to come in as a text element? And, I know we talked last time about custom fonts. We can obviously carry those things over if you have them set in Figma and want to support them as live text.
So a few things to consider too in that strategy, right? If you want to add personalization, then you want some of these things to be editable in the builder, so that when the seller comes in on the personalization viewer, they can see that and make that update, and you've already put your font in, just like you said, Sean. I think the other thing to consider, if you are bringing over static, is maybe that's not what you want at all. You don't want anyone to be able to touch that stuff, and you need that brand guidance and not control, but consistency to stay put and stay in your Figma file where the content creators have control. And I think there's two ways to look at that. I mean, there's no one way that works best for a company, but I think keeping, like you said, Sean, one kind of, what did you say? One true document?
Single source of truth?
Single source of truth.
Let's
in
go.
Figma means that no matter what, if that is your kind of long-standing evergreen content, 80% of the design is always going to be in Figma. Maybe 20% comes over to tile to do that transformation. But by keeping it in Figma, I think a real great use case, especially for enterprise teams, is if this is an evergreen kind of, let's say, capabilities deck, and you need to continuously rebrand that to your prospect. Doing that in PowerPoint, even if you can update the theme, is a one-to-one. And sometimes manual, even if some of your components aren't linked to the theme. Whereas here, if we go back to the UI kit and we change those colors and we update the component of the logo, you can rebrand and reskin that evergreen template in seconds. And that's not hyperbole. As quickly as Sean has updated the fonts, updated the colors, and changed that logo in the UI kit, those are global changes because they have the same name and you've already done the mapping of the sync to tiled. all you have to do is resync and update, as in refresh, and you have a reskinned, reusable template now branded to a new prospect. That to me is a reason enough to change over to Figma in this respect, but I don't want to oversell you. I think it's worth trying, at least, even on a smaller scale, even if you don't want to do this whole template. Taking over 3-4 slides that you typically would do in PowerPoint, bringing them over just to see what that looks like in real practice.
For sure. And I think as you're talking about like the benefits and the sweeping changes too, just as you're getting used to Figma, like I have this text selected, it's blue. However, if I go to this page, it's purple, right? And that indicates it's a component. And those components are what's going to help you, shift back and forth and make one change and have it apply across all the components wherever it exists. So, a ton of things to like and reasons in which we have set up our plugin with Figma. Also queued up templates just to make your life easier as far as going from 0 to 1 with making something new and interactive. Okay, so hopefully this has been helpful just as far as the design perspective from Jess and Kyle's side of things, but also just the tactical as you're getting started with Tiled, or if you've used Tiled for a while and where Figma can really help you design with interaction in mind. But Figma, non-linear design, collaboration, components, as we're talking about sweeping changes so that you don't have to go copy and paste things on every single page one at a time. That's where Figma shines and why we've leaned in to Figma again. Kyle showed us how he's using Figma as far as innovation and creative problem solving, and a couple good tips and tricks for us. And then digging into the workflow, right? So starting from a template, syncing over from Figma, where you might want to use components, where you might want to bring things over as pages versus coming in as assets, for the scrolls and the carousels, and designing with interactivity in mind. Figma's really going to get you 80% of the way there, right? All of your colors, your typography, your copy, your layout. Again, the templates that we give you help you, but you can fully reverse engineer it and flip it on its head. So Figma's going to do most of the heavy lifting for you. Tile takes you the rest of the way there, right? The assembly, the transformation, and then ultimately the packaging it up as a, presentation ready, production ready asset, and with all the analytics that come into play as well. So we'll save the analytic plug for another time, but
and the reusability, right? Making sure that file is always the most current, and you just can resync that over time and time again, even if you've made some modifications in Tiled. Despite technical difficulties, I think we wholesale hand over fist improved on this episode, if I do say so myself. I think this definitely has more actionable insights, more thought about how we're looking at design and that mindset shift from static to interactive, not just in tools, like I mentioned earlier before. People don't start in Figma. It is a step-by-step process that some people arrive at. And so if you're not quite there yet, just start testing. Like I said, it's free. Just try it out. If you're still in PowerPoint, our next episode is for you. So episode 3 drops December 3rd. We're calling that Deck the Halls, try to get in the holiday spirit. That will be the PowerPoint to Tiled workflow. Similar to this, but specific to that PowerPoint-centric workflow.
And we want to hear from you. We know we're sending out the emails with the links to the new Tap In episodes, so reply to those, comment on LinkedIn, send any questions that you have, or any ideas for future episodes. Tell us what's working or where you're stuck, and hopefully we can help.
Yeah, so that's it. That's a wrap on episode 2. Your work is ready. We'll see you December 3rd.